Well, hello, everyone, and welcome. Today, my name is Katie Bradford Osborne. I am the founder and curator of Roaring Artist Gallery. We're a fully virtual art gallery that shows exclusively the work of women identifying and non-binary artists. And we are here today for the third of our series of artist talks from our Audacity exhibition. And I think this one's going to be such an awesome one. I'm really excited to hear what all three of you have to say today. We're going to be starting, just a moment, let me pull up your Sahar. So we're going to be starting with Sahar Tarighi, and I'm going to read a little short artist statement that I have from Sahar because I love it. And then I'm going to hand it over to you and we'll get started. All right. Okay. Anxiety and tension in a world of genocides, wars, displacement, and racism build the mainstays of my art. Coming from a Kurdish craft background and culture, my work evolves at the intersection of ceramic, sculpture, installation, and performance. I utilize textiles, yarn, and clay, indispensable elements of Kurdish art, to establish connections between the traditions of my heritage and contemporary art. Through this creativity, I aim to initiate a dialogue with my audience and ultimately make the world a better place. I love that statement, and I'm excited to hear what you have to say, Sarah. Go for it.
Thank you. Appreciate it. Thank you so much. First, I'm going to say that thank you. I really appreciate for giving me this great opportunity to talk about my arts, my backgrounds, everything. Really appreciate all your efforts to have this great time together. May I ask you to please, is it possible right now to share my screen? Okay. Actually, I'm going to say that my name is Sahar Tarighi. I was born and raised in Oshnavie, a small city located in northwest of Iran, Iranian Kurdistan. Unfortunately, when my dad passed away, I was kind of like 13, and my older sister got me the sitar, a musical instrument. So it was kind of like the start of this great journey and getting familiar with this endless of art world. Apart from that, my sister attendance to art university was a stepping stone to me to immerse myself in art. So, but since Schno was a small city, we didn't have, unfortunately, an art high school. So after graduation in mathematics and physics, I started by my own kind of like started reading for art, and finally I got admission from an art college in Tehran, the capital city of Iran. And fortunately, it was an art teacher training college. For this matter, I started teaching when I was 19. And after that, I have been teaching for about kind of like 15 years in my hometown for 5 years and in Tehran for 9 years. And I taught different types of majoring arts like painting, drawing, and ceramics also. Anyway, this is my hometown, and this is me in Kurdish outfits. One of the main income for Kurdish women especially is crafts, and I love motifs. I love crafts, especially different types of textiles. And if you can see, there is different types of them with different purpose. Now, can you see the screen? Okay. And they have different names also with different purpose, especially, for example, this one in the left side, religious people use it for during praying on it. So as I mentioned already, they have different purposes. They are used for different purposes. And also this is Kurdish women's scarves with some awesome motifs. And these are for a hat for men's, but unfortunately among, just older generation use them, but recently kind of like younger generation don't like wearing them. So it's kind of like annoying to me. As I already said, I have an associate degree in visual arts and BA in handicrafts and MA in painting. During my MA, I was proposing and writing a proposal when it comes to having a comparative study between Mannai arts. They're kind of like Mannai was an ancient kingdom related to 3,000 years ago. They were located in my hometown. Archaeologists mentioned that they were working on these amazing bricks for having kind of like a holy place. So I was thinking I'm gonna have a comparative study between these motifs that their history dates to 3,000 years ago with contemporary Kurdish handwoven to see the similarities and differentiation between them. So the result was really amazing to me. If you can see in these, it was my theoretical part of my thesis during my MA. If you can see here in the left column, you can see the motifs on handicrafts one, the contemporary one, and on the other side, you can see the motifs on bricks. And obviously, you can see the movement of motifs, the similarity between 3,000 years ago and recently works of related to just the contemporary time. So again, here we have these types of similarities, and here too. For my practical project, as I mentioned, archaeologists mentioned that these bricks related to 3,000 years ago may be made for having some sort of holy place. So I was imagining that people praying. So I was designing and sketching people in a new context, in painting on canvas, and using that motifs with different types of colors and in a new context. And these paintings that you are watching are my studio practice at that time, using motifs with different colors, but at the same time in a new context. At that time, painting was my main medium, and I used it a lot to convey my inner world. I was reading poem, and I kind of like my interpretation of that poem. I was painting according to that poem. But on the other side, ceramic was another medium that I always kind of like fell in love with it, and has become an indispensable part of my lives, because I don't know, I feel much more comfortable with ceramics, with clay. So for my first kind of like collection in ceramics, I got inspired with writing that you can see here, and also some motifs on here on Monet's art, like Sphinx, Lamassu, the combination of human body and animal body. So I started working for my new collection in ceramics called Identity. So I'm always searching for my identity. I don't know who I am, where, I'm going to go, or these loaded questions. So I started to cut their head out, because, as you know, head is the place of thinking, and I love abstract work. So I was sketching these sort of creatures and baking of ceramics, and also black color always is the symbol of oil to me, something that the vast majority of wars and genocide revolves around oil and power. So, because, as you know, I'm coming from Middle East, and I was born there and I grew up there. So it's become part of my realistic life. And this is me with my children. In my previous workplace, I used to be a teacher, so I didn't have access. I didn't have kiln in my home, because we lived with my husband in a small apartment in Tehran. So when I was working, I took my children to art high school, and I fired them. I work in this way. At this time, I was applying. I made up my mind to continue my education in abroad. So I got admission from some universities in the US, but due to the pandemic, unfortunately, I lost some of them and I deferred some of them. I couldn't come here because I wasn't able to get my visa. So these kind of like self-portrait, I took it when we were in lockdown, and, I was bombarded with different parts of different kind of like negative news. Many people lost their lives at that time, and we weren't able to come back home to see my family members. So this negative emotion were with me at that time. Finally, after I think 10 months, we were able to come back home, and I took this idea with myself because I didn't have access to kiln. So I was thinking in another way to sketch my idea, to kind of like convey my feeling. So I got closer to the nature, and I started working like a performer and having these collection. Like at the same time, I wanted just to emphasize on the nature and kind of like worry about the nature, overusing plastic bags, disposable containers. And on the other side, it was kind of like a safe shelter to me during the COVID situation. So I'd like to freeze everything. And on the other hand, I just wanted to mention everything is going to be covered with plastic due to the overusing it. Again, it was just to me like meditation during rounding around this tree and focusing, and again, sitting and talking to the nature. it depends on the situation. To me, using different types of mediums, I don't like to just focus on with just one medium. It depends on the situation and my ideas. But honestly, ceramics is my main favorite and my main preoccupation, especially these days. On the other side, at that time, during the pandemic again, we had lots of fire in Zagros Mountain, and Zagros Mountains are really important because they are covered with lots of oak tree, and unfortunately, during saving these forests, some environmentalists lost their lives. So I picked up some of the oak shells. I don't know the exact name of oak shell. I think it will be correct. I mean, these one. So I picked up some of them, and I had them like at an installation in my hometown in commemoration of that environmentalists that lost their lives and sacrificed their lives to save the nature. Finally, we got our visa. After 2 years, we went to Armenia with my husband. And I already knew about the Armenian genocide because of Anfal genocide. So when we went there to these memorials, I felt really down in the dumps, and I wanted just to have some sort of performance there again to show my feeling and kind of like a sympathy. So I started doing these with my husband, kind of like over. It took us 1 day approximately. Finally, the result came out in this way. This is my family members. I have kind of like a large family members. I love all of them, super sportive, and I miss them a lot. This is the time of leaving my hometown, and before coming here 8 months ago. This is this kind of like the worst part of immigration. But anyway, I just wanted to mention that this sort of feeling of genocide, war, Middle East, I have all of them with myself, and I'm going to show you these. Oops. Sorry, can you hear me? Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, sorry. Okay. I just wanted to mention how far my hometown is it, and these sort of emotion and feeling, even if you want to change your place, always are with you. So I arrived here with lots of kind of like, when I came here, the main problem to me was kind of like language barrier. Apart from that, not culture shock, but to some extent homesickness. So again, a sense of suspicious, some sort of negative feeling, and all around these feeling I can see in my work. Here, our faculty had us to have an exhibition. And I chose this wheel because, as you know, the identity of wheel is kind of like passing through, going through, go forward. But I try to stuck it between the space between the floor and ceiling. But after 1 month, when I wanted to deinstall it, I realized, oh my goodness, yeah, this is something that I'm expecting of that wheel. I just wanted to cut it out and again tell to the wheel, please just go to your identity, the real one. And this is my studio here. Most of the time I'm working with clay and ceramics. And on the other hand, I'm teaching to some extent.
Okay.
Yeah. And again, I'm sketching when I want to create some sort of creatures again via clay. Again, hanging some sort of sense of suspicious, and I started working on trauma collection. To some extent, it was kind of like in line with my previous collection, but for this one, I was wrapping red yarn around them, like a contradiction between a negativeness, some sort of feeling, pressure, tension, blood, and on the other side, they are some sort of creatures that want to get rid of that negativeness, that severe circumstances. And again, I cut their head, and these cone shapes are kind of to me represents the form of hand. They are trying to get rid of, like a cocoon, they are trying to fly, they need help. So I just like to be the voice of these sort of peoples that want to get rid of pressure and tension. Again, with the same concept, but in another way. In my mind, if you want to cut a tree like this trunk, they are strong enough to grow again in another places. So again, you will be able to see lots of blood, lots of pressure, but we are strong enough to renew our life again, our energy, and grow again. When I came here, I made up my mind to work on Anfal genocide or Kurdish genocide, especially with clay. So Anfal genocide, I don't know, have you ever already heard about it or not? Anfal genocide happened against Kurdish people in Iraq in 1988. And during this catastrophic situation, more than 182,000 civilians, people, innocent one, and children had been killed and lost their lives, unfortunately. And just some European countries, as far as I know, like Sweden and Norway, I kind of like know it as a genocide. So it's really, that's a pity. And as an artist, I'd like to absorb people attention towards this issue. And I was researching, I realized not only in Armenia, in Kurdistan, in the Middle East, even in here in the US, we have lots of genocides and war. So I was starting having a proposal again and have some sort of performance and installation when it comes to genocide in general, not just for Anfal one. And I got a grant from University of Delaware. I'm gonna do it during the summer because until now we have lots of problems, even in Ukraine, in Afghanistan, in Syria, in different parts of the world. So as an artist, hopefully, I hope to leave a positive impact on the society and to some extent raise public awareness. So anyway, I didn't want to share some negative emotion with you, but this is real life. So during this project, the Anfal one, I'm working on in a representative way. This is kiln, and I put my faces, I mean, my children, working in regarding genocide and war is really hard and a strong and heavy context. And most of the time, I feel, deeply like a sympathy, and I feel bad when I making and shaping this face, and I just imagine their lives, their hope, why we don't have equal rights, why some people have to lose their life just for what, for the sake of power, for the sake of oil, for what? So anyway, there is lots of questions that during the working I come across. This is the previous one was the first firing process, bisque firing. The second one is for glaze firing. So I chose raku firing because you can see the result, because during the raku firing, the colored oxides lose their oxygen completely close to my ideas, because during the Anfal genocide in Kurdistan, Saddam Hussein, Chemical Ali used mustard gas, so they get stuck at that severe circumstances, catastrophic situation that, so for this matter, I chose this one. And finally, right now, I'm working result came out in this way. I put all of them in this container, got stuck in this situation. And I'm gonna show you just a small. Yeah, thank you for watching. Right now, I'm working on this project, and hopefully I will be able to make more to not have these sort of problems again and again. And simultaneously, I'm working on this project, The Wall. And this is my last installation. When I saw The Wall movie by Pink Floyd, I got really, it left a profound impact on my mind. And at that time, I was just imagining one day I'm going to visualize it, like that time that students were falling down to the meat grinder. And now there are some sort of, again, people, innocent one, that here you can see some sort of filter, some sort of forms that you got to pass through them and be shaped in the way and transformed in the way that they are expecting, And the final step is this one. They are vitrified and they are fired. Again, they are oily and with black color again. If unfortunately they never come back to their first step, because I fire them, if you want to, because they are trying to come back to their first step, but never it happened, never. But hopefully in the future, we will be able, by our art, make our place a better place to live. Thank you so much. This is also my hometown. Really appreciate all of your time, efforts, and thank you for watching. Yeah. Can I stop my share? Katie, could you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. I'm going to stop my share. Is it okay?
Yes, that's fine.
Okay. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you so much for sharing. That was fascinating and so interesting to see what you're doing throughout. It was really interesting seeing how that red yarn has followed through with your work through so many different concepts. And that's really poignant to me. Does anybody have any questions or comments? I know Karen had said, Sahar, I really resonate with your statement. I don't know who I am. I thought that was such an interesting thing, what you were doing with removing the heads. And then with your latest work, it's all heads. That was really interesting to me too.
Oh, you're not seeing your screen. I'm so sorry. I don't know what was the problem. I always try just to do my best. I don't know what was wrong. I'm sorry.
Technology, but it's okay. We saw everything, I think.
Thank you.
Send me though, I'm not sure the videos were playing correctly. Send me those afterwards and I'll add them into
Sure.
the recording.
Of course.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, Anna?
I just wanted to say how much I love your work and appreciate everything that you're talking about really comes through in what you're doing. And I just love the way one of the pieces towards the end with the oily kind of, what are they, tubes almost. I really love those. They're gorgeous.
Thank you so much. I appreciated your positive vibes. Thank you.
Does anybody have any other questions or comments? If not, we'll go ahead and move forward. But Sahar, thank you so much for sharing.
Anytime.
Thank you for sharing your story and your homeland with us, as well as your art. I feel like that's really a gift, and thank you.
Anytime. Thank you so much.
All right, well, we will move forward. Next, we have Karen Hanrahan, and I'm going to read your bio real quick, Karen, and then I'll hand it over to you.
Thank you.
All right, Karen Hanrahan found her way to Washington State in her mid-50s after living most of her life in the Midwest. She has grown children, a cat. She loves reading, road trips, scratch cooking, and anything made of glass. She lives small in less than 300 square feet and values light, quiet, and privacy. She makes quilt-like mixed media pieces out of paper. Her materials are gifted or found, which keeps her making very low cost and sustainable. She has been a collage artist for over 25 years, and her work is shown in galleries all over the country. She facilitates an e-workshop that teaches others the creative subconscious mind collaging process. I'm very excited to hear from you today, Karen. We have had Karen's art in the gallery a few different times, and this is the first time we've been able to have her for an artist talk, and I can't wait to hear what you have to say. So I'm going to turn it over to you.
Okay. So hello, everyone. Thank you so much. So my name is Karen Hanrahan. I'm a collage artist and photographer. I'm beginning my artist talk with this logo that was made for me, sight unseen. It was by a person I've never met who read my bio when I used to blog. I used to blog about wellness, and I love that plus 20 years later, that this logo is now very much about me as an artist. And so it's a person who is maternal, a person who is nurturing, a person who is rooted. I'm not nearly as thin, but it represents very much who I am. I also want to acknowledge that we're all here today together on Mama's Day. When I lived in the county, which is about 45 minutes from where I'm living now, very rural, I got two new neighbors. I got brown cow neighbors and black cow neighbors. And when this mama had her baby, it was her 11th pregnancy. And I love how photography is a narrative, how it tells stories. And I think that this is a very vibrant mama story, and I just am always drawn to it on Mother's Day. This cow is tired. I don't know how else to say it. And I know that as mothers, we're tired sometimes, right? So here we go. I am a mother of two. I honor my adult children by not posting their pictures on social media. And so our family photos look a lot like this. My son lives in Chicago. My daughter lives in New York. And we recently saw each other in February after many years. And so this is a poignant photograph. I actually really love this picture. People will say, oh, Karen, send me a headshot, send me a picture of you. And I don't really do that. When I take pictures of myself, they look like this. They look a little arty or a little whimsical. I want to introduce you to my current soulmate, my cat. Her name is Amber. You'll see a little bit of her throughout this presentation. The image that's on the far right comes from a place of kind of sharing how I'm a self-taught artist. So I'm undegreed, but I had lots of different school experiences. I went to college for a year. I went to the American Academy of Art in Chicago for a year. I went and studied at a community college where this piece was made. And so, let's just pretend that I have a degree. I have a cumulative of education. This assignment was a self-portrait in the style of a famous artist. And at this particular time, my marriage was failing. And I had my first car accident, and I've had 7 car accidents. And so at the time when I made this, very much like Sahar said, where I don't know who I am. A lot of the art that I made, I didn't resonate with at the time. I actually hated this assignment. I thought that drawing on charcoal was stupid. Why would I ever want to do Elvis type, paintings or drawings? And I didn't see myself in the self-portrait at the time. But when I look at it today, many, many years later, it shows exactly who I was at this moment in my life. And I really value that. I think that's really, really cool. So anyway, this is me today. And we're going to talk about my submission to this show, Audacity, which is titled Flight. And what this is really about is the making of a wonky star. And so I promise that I'll get to that, but I want to give you a little background on the things that I've made in my past as an artist. So I first want to talk about my studio. One of the things that happened when I moved to Washington in 2015 is the person who I met, a stranger on Craigslist who I was supposed to live with. She said to me when I arrived that I couldn't stay there. And so I had moved 3,500 miles to a place where I couldn't live. And 2.5 years later, it took me that long to find a safe place to live. And there's a lot of narrative and a lot of stories about home and safety and security and things like that. But when I look at the picture on the left, people will tell me it's so utilitarian where I live now. I live in low-income housing. It took 2.5 years to get this little teeny tiny apartment. But as you can see on the picture on the right, this is my studio. It's a 6-foot table. It's round. The place has a vibe, and I have the most stupendous view. And I just took this picture. This is very, very recent. And I posted it on Facebook, and some strangers made comments. One of them said, I can't explain it. Maybe it's the composition or the lighting, but this just made me feel. And then another person said, this is painting a picture of someone's soul. And I love how, again, a photograph can portray how I feel, because these strangers made comments that are very, very true. And so this is my studio. This is my little teeny tiny home. I have these 2 huge, remarkable windows. I have the chair and laptop where I work, and then I have my 6-foot table where I make collages, and then a kitchen where I scratch cook, and then this stunning, stunning view. I have a west exposure, so I have all this sunset material, which is just amazing. And what I struggle with deeply is storage. And I just wanted to show you that this is all art storage. To the left is where archival collages are stored and my materials. And then to the right are stacks of things that people have given me, magazines, old periodicals, all kinds of stuff, and then supplies. And so one of the things that I'm a collector of art. And so in this teeny tiny space, I have over 80 pieces of other people's art. And in all the moves that I've had in my life, I've moved 29 times. And so I'm really good at moving. But I always took my collection of art with me. So Amber spends a lot of time with me while I make art. And when you look at this round table, you can see kind of all this chaos and lots of stacks of paper, lots of bits of paper, but I know where everything is. And I'm looking at the picture on the left, and there's a piece of paper that I recently used in a collage, and I'm like, oh yeah, I know where that is. I know what that piece of paper is. And so thank you, Katie, for mentioning the times that I've been with you before. I think that being part of the process of a juried art call is a huge honor. To be selected by a stranger, Katie, I've not met you personally, but I feel like I know you because I've kind of followed you from the beginning of your beginning this virtual gallery, and you've brought so much art to life in such a different and unique way. And I've been very, very, very lucky to be a part of it. So the collage in the middle, the second collage piece, was in the Hope exhibition. And this collage was made in the late 90s. And I want to draw your attention to, oh yeah, the circles thing. So when I teach collage, I point people to a technique. You're either going to be someone who cuts with a pair of scissors when you pull your images, or you're going to tear. And so if you tear your images, you're going to get this edge, this beautiful white edge of paper. And tearing for me was like terrifying. Like, no, I'm a safety person. I'm an order person. I'm going to cut things. And so having a moment of tearing in this collage ever so long ago was a brave thing for me to do. At that time, I wasn't a defined artist. I was just collaging with other women, and I was looking for myself and who I was, and I was about to get married for the second time. The collages that are on the left and the right are very current, so kind of 2021, and they're following a quilting process that's called crazy quilting. And so I've applied crazy quilting, which is stuff that you do with fabric, to paper. And so the process includes having a center, kind of, you can see here, a center focal image. Here it is with these beautiful birds, and they're 5-sided. And then you work along the sides of each center image, and you add strips of fabric and quilting, but I added strips of paper. And so my need to stitch began before 2020, where I was rebuilding my life after this wonderful move to Washington. And I say it's a wonderful move to Washington because I love being here, but it didn't quite come together right away. And so once I did get here, and once I did land in an apartment that was safe and secure, I had to rebuild my life. I basically fell apart, which is a little bit of the story behind the collage that's wonky, the wonky star. So these are also old style, the way that I used to collage. And each one of these collages is a narrative. Each one of these it's a story, and I could tell way too many stories about each of these pieces. But these are basically about deciding to move west, and then moving west and having it not work out the way that I wanted. And so my brain was kind of exploding. That's what this one's about. And then meeting a person who's not who they say they are, a bit of betrayal. And then there are pieces like these where, like, who's going to believe some of the stories, the things that happen to a person in their life? It's like, nobody's going to believe me. And the second collage here is a call for help. I moved one place and my car died, and I was without a vehicle for 8 weeks. And this was my collage saying, I need help. And I got help. Someone pulled together a GoFundMe and got me a vehicle. And it was the most amazing thing ever. And it showed up in my collage work. I didn't plan this collage to be a call for help, but inside my heart and in my subconscious mind, I needed help. And then the collage on the left is part of a very long collage story, about 40 pieces, about a maniacal neighbor and someone who was bullying me. Someone scared me, and there he is in my collage. And again, I didn't plan for him to show up from a random magazine, you know, but this man in this collage looks exactly like the person that was giving me a hard time. And then as I've evolved my collage, these are recent pieces, but they come from my teaching, and I call them vibrational pieces. So they have a vibe to them. There's a prompt, something I've read that I've discussed or written about. And then these are what shows up in my journals. And so I mentioned earlier that I am a photographer, and I have 90,000+ photos in my in my archives. I promise I'm not going to show them to you today, but these are some of the more, I don't know, what do you call it? These have been in juried shows, or these have sold, or these have been important somehow. And photography is a strong, strong way that I speak to the world. My daughter calls it a love language. And so I wanted to figure out, how do I incorporate or bring together multimedia type pieces? This is a very, very early stitched piece with a picture of mine. Those pumpkins is a photograph of mine. And the stitching, as you can see, I hadn't figured out how to use the sewing machine. So these are all really like not right. And then I have an old handkerchief, like a handkerchief that was completely threadbare. I have a collection of handkerchiefs that are kind of like treasures to me, and I would normally not cut one apart, but this one was so threadbare that it was okay. And what was interesting to me is this was an experiment. To me, this was like, I wonder what this would look like, but this sold immediately. And let's see, it's 2022. I didn't start selling art or showing art until about 2016. And so having someone buy your art, even something that you think is just kind of like a scrap or an experiment. It's a big honor, and it's a wonderful thing. These are just other examples of other collages that I've made along the way, and you can see how stitching. You can see in the first piece there's no stitching. In the second piece, this is early stitching. And then in the technique, I use the rest of that handkerchief. You can see it's a little bit freeform. But one of the things that happens in collage is a technique called image pairing. And so in this piece, this is just 2 magazine images that are put together. Same with this. This is just 2 magazine images. And at the time when I made this piece, I was broken. I was really struggling and trying to find my way. And I felt like the stitching was kind of pulling me back together, like taking the broken pieces and putting them back together. And then, so I know that I said I was going to talk about wonky stars, and that's really the theme of my my artist talk today. And so I rambled about all kinds of other things. So I promise that we are there. I'm going to talk about wonky stars now, but I thought this picture of Amber really said, you know, like, Mom, are you done yet or what? So I saw wonky stars in quilting, and I thought, I love these wonky stars. And so I just tried to make one from my mind. And this is a terrible wonky star. I mean, it's more than wonky. It's way off. It's just crazy. But I love this first attempt at wonky stars. I love it. And so my second attempt is I watched tutorials. And so this is a quilt square. I think it's called the 9-point, where there are 9 squares. And I actually sewed this like a person who's a quilter. And I hated sewing it. I hated the process. And I don't like this wonky star because it's very, square. I think that's the right word. It's too square. Even though the four-sided part of what makes a star wonky, you need the four sides, but this doesn't resonate with me. And so then I tried a different way where obviously I shifted the square. And this was my first successful wonky star. And I love this, but it's more complicated than you expect. It's kind of hard to explain, but they're not easy to make. And so anyway, this is the journey of them, where it started completely random, where I tried to learn and teach myself. And then the final, like, wait a minute, I think I'm onto something. And so then I played with wonky stars in lots of different ways. And these all just have such a vibe to them and express the wonky star that I want to share with the world. And so then we get to this one, which is what I submitted to the show. And in this wonky star, first of all, the bird, the centerpiece, I've had that image torn out of a Sun magazine for a really long time. And this is what happens in my life, is that I'll just tear something and it'll sit there and it'll look at me. And it wasn't until it was placed on the background, so the crumpled gray and the two of those combined, again, image pairing, where I'm like, okay, these two pieces of paper belong together. I also included some of my photographies. So around the bird, these pink, that's one of my photographs, and this is some kale. That's kind of mixed media, where it's incorporating more than one thing, but it's mine. But this wonky star, first of all, you can see how wonky. It's like square, but it's not. And then you can see that the points are not one point, but 2 points. This is a double point wonky star. And to try and say that fast like a million times, it's not going to work. And then I crumpled the paper because I wanted to express some tension. And the entire commentary about this collage is fight or flight. And so when I finally landed in this studio apartment, I had been holding my breath, and I had been in fight or flight for over 2 years. And I didn't realize it. I didn't realize it at all. And so then I had to spiral a little bit and regroup to kind of make my way. And so I love the image of this bird that's kind of like on the outside of our lives and is struggling to make its way. And I love that this bird is okay. Like, it hit the glass, it hit the window, but it survived. And that's kind of how I feel. In the call for art, I submitted this piece, but I also submitted this. And while this one isn't in the show, I wanted to show it because this one is like flight or flying, and this one feels like it's landing. And I always like to laugh at myself because this green here is from my grocery mailer. Those are Brussels sprouts that were in season at the time in the coupons that I got in the mail. And so it's just another way that I incorporate what's around me into my work. And so this is a most current wonky star. And all of these pieces are, the centerpiece is an embossed turn of the century postcard someone sent me in the mail. And then the star's points are handmade paper that someone else sent me in the mail. And I was looking at this star when I was making this making this slideshow. And I realized what's different about this star is that it's 5-sided. It's not 4-sided. And I couldn't figure out what was wrong with it. And I like this piece, but it's it's like an additionally wonky because of that fifth side. And remember I said that I had found a little piece of paper, like, oh, there's a piece of paper that, you know, I used later in the collage. Well, this was the piece of paper right here. It was something that was in one of my former photos. And that just amazes me because I might have a piece of paper that has sat on my table for a year. So these, I'm going to kind of close with, these are very current, but recent examples of just a variety of work. These are all very bright and cheerful, and they follow the crazy quilting style, and bring me a lot of joy to make. What I'm doing next, just to say what I'm up to next, it's very hard for me as a photographer to have an exhibition that's just photography, because photography is very, very expensive. And so by the time you print your photograph and mat it and frame it, it's very, very expensive. But I did land a solo exhibit. I was invited in 2019 for a show in 2020. And then, of course, that didn't happen. And so my opening is in June, and the show is about my dirty dishes. It's about my cutlery in the sink. It's about how beautiful everyday life is. And so I'm really, really looking forward to having that exhibit. And what's kind of cool is I'm having another exhibit across the street on the same day, but it's not solo. And these are part of a long-term project that began in 2018. I call it the People Project. And there are about 40 pieces to the People Project, but there are 3 phases. And the piece that you see before you is phase 3, and it's portraiture within a boundary. And it has to do with people that betray, or people who are not who they say they are, or people who abandon, or people who confuse you, or manipulate you, or it could be a version of myself who's kind of inside my head currently, maybe too much. I celebrate my introvert self very deeply. Anyway, these are in a show that's called Kaleidoscope of Color. And I chose these pieces because they're very, very bright. And I'm excited. There's 15, I think, that will be in the show. So that's what I'm up to next. And so the best way to reach me or kind of be in touch, I think, is Instagram. I have a strong visual presence on social media. I've been on social media since 2005. So that's many, many years and many, many places. And so I think the best is Instagram if you'd like to find me. And here's Amber again, just to say, goodbye and thank you for listening to my my artist talk. If there's any questions, I would love to hear them.
Thank you so much, Karen. That was absolutely wonderful hearing your story. And I'm excited for the things that you have coming up. I hope you'll share some images on Instagram of the things that you have upcoming. Let me see. There we go. Now I'm back. But that was wonderful. Does anybody have any questions or comments?
That was so wonderful, Karen. I really, really enjoyed that. That was just, I'd love to meet you one day. You just sound awesome.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah, I used to do a lot of collage, and it just a few things that you said about just having things lying around, and then one day they just come together, and it's the feeling you get when that happens is so special. It's very hard to describe. And it's making me want to collage again.
Well, I encourage you to tear as soon as you can, with all the boldness that you can find.
Yeah, definitely.
And definitely use your kitchen coupons and stuff, right?
I think, Sahar, you might have been saying something, but it was muted.
Just wanted to appreciate it. I really enjoyed listening, Karen. I love collage, but you paid lots of attention to details, to story behind them. Really interesting. Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
And Elizabeth said, thank you, fascinating. I agree. That's a good word. I think, yeah, your attention to detail is so interesting. Every piece that we've had in the show, there's been some that had some humor, some that had, and just some very poignant stories. And you don't always know the story, but I think with collage, a lot of times with those little details, when you pay as close attention to them as you do, we can feel them. And it's a really special thing that you bring to your artwork. And yeah, I feel like we have been so lucky to be able to have you for multiple shows now in the gallery, and every time that you've been there, it's been just a joy. So I wanted you to know that I really appreciate that you've been around pretty much, yeah, since the beginning. And
I love being here. I love being a part of it. I have met a lot of other artists who I resonate with through Roaring Artist Gallery, some of which I've become like a gushy fan, you know, and I'm serious. Like every Instagram post that I can encourage, I'm like, you go, you know, and that's because of you, Katie. It's very much because of you. So thank you.
Well, that has made my day. It truly has. This is what I want to come from the gallery. So that just makes me so happy. I also did want to mention, from a personal perspective, your work with cutlery that just really touched me. There's so much that comes from your dirty dishes, but there's so much that comes from that. I know whenever I grew up living part of the time with my grandmother, and after she passed away, the thing that I wanted was her cutlery. It had so much meaning to me. And actually I did. I had it turned into a ring that I wear. My thumb ring is from a spoon of hers.
Well,
So I'm excited to see more of that as well. I think that there's so much depth to that concept. So does anybody else have any comments or questions? Well, thank you so much, Karen. I appreciate you coming and sharing so much. Great. And next up, we have Anna Flack. Anna, I'll read your bio real quick, and then I'll hand it over to you. All right. Okay, this is Anna's statement. I'm an artist and mother living in Cambridge, England. I produce soft sculpture, paint, and draw in inks and acrylics. My work is a continuous exploration of the unconscious through the relationships I form in the materials, assembling, deconstructing, and reassembling forms. Often I will finish a soft sculpture and then take it apart to make smaller ones. This was the process with the work I'm submitting here. My techniques are entirely self-taught, drawing on influences of collage and cut and paste. All right, Anna, and I'll hand it over to you.
Okay. Hi, everyone. It's really good to be here. I want to talk today a bit more about the work I submitted for the show and how it came into being, a little bit about my process. Let's do the screen share. My knight in shining armor, very old-fashioned. Damn. Anyway, this sketch I did, about 5 years ago, and it's basically a kind of, what it means to me basically is I'm trying to befriend the fear of my creative process. And I became really interested in the idea of a girl and a crocodile, and that kind of there's some kind of power in that to me. This predatory, scary creature and a really sort of innocent, naive, trusting figure of a girl. And something about that really struck me, and it stuck with me. And it said, the writing on it says, "Long ago in the river, we made a plan to get away together." And this really became like a kind of mantra to me. I don't know if that's the right phrase, but yeah, something that just kept, while I was making this body of work, it just kept going over and over in my head, that long ago we made a plan to get away together. And it's almost as if that girl that I was a long, long time ago, that knew I was an artist and knew that I had to keep making work. It's like a kind of commitment, or a harping back to that person that I was, and to stick with that plan that was made sort of deep in my unconscious mind. And I decided to make a huge soft sculpture of a girl and a crocodile intertwined together. And I hadn't done anything like this for a really long time. And it was a really, I will show you an image of it a bit later. It's not supposed to be there yet, so don't worry. It was a huge project, and I used to do a lot of really time-consuming projects, hand-sewn projects, and I hadn't done one for a long time, and it was a really lovely way to reconnect with that process. I was really suffering at the time with a lot of anxiety and depression, and there was something so calming to my nervous system, really, about just having this huge thing I was sewing, and I couldn't do anything else. I was like contained by this part of the work, which was really nice, but it was like a safe holding space for me. But then it also became like a kind of trap. And on reflection, I can see that I was being held in this space, this obsessive sewing this huge thing that I was never going to finish. And it was almost like, well, what happens if I never finish this? You know, if I'm tied to my sewing desk with this huge project, I can't possibly do any of the other things I need to do as an artist. You know, maybe I'll never finish it. And that wasn't such a good thing. So I got really bored and started making other things. And this is another piece I submitted to the show. And if you look, you can see a girl, and there is actually a crocodile down here, but you can't see it that well. But yeah, this was something I did alongside doing this huge soft sculpture. And I also, I also made this for my friend. It's actually a little decorative bag, and that's the top. And it was just really nice to do something smaller that I could complete in like a few days rather than taking forever. And I did this doll as well. So it's really, really getting back into the sewing process. And here is the huge soft sculpture. Yeah, I think in total it must have taken me like 3 or 4 years maybe. It's insane. And the writing is there too. It still says, "Long ago in the river, we made a plan to go away together." And here's a close-up, some more close-ups of it. Oh yeah. I got really into the writing part of it, and this wasn't part of the larger sculpture, but there was something really lovely about making these small words. Maybe I should have twigged at the time that these small things I was doing that I was just completing quite quickly were actually more helpful in a way. And they were really satisfying. And I still would love to do like a whole wall full of these sentences. I don't have a whole photo of this one, which is a shame. I just seem to have this half a word here. but that is actually a whole word. And yeah, also from the large sculpture, I tend to do a lot of drawing from what I'm sculpting. And sometimes it's the other way around. So I'll draw and then I'll sculpt from the drawings. And this is, I can play a little video of this notebook. And then I did some bigger, just rough sketches that I actually was finding more interesting than making the huge thing. And I'd still love to turn them into paintings one day. They'd make really nice, huge paintings. And so, so it was completed. I'd made this massive sculpture, and then I sort of sat back and looked at it and thought, actually, it's beautiful, but it doesn't really mean anything to me anymore. As a whole object, it didn't mean anything. It was kind of irrelevant. But sections of it really spoke to me and stood out. And I just thought, that section needs to come out, and that bit needs to come out and be made into something else. So I cut it up. And all my friends were like, what? You just spent forever on this. Why are you doing that? And this is me playing about with the idea of turning it into a sculpture. A costume. And I made part of it into a headdress. And there was nothing else added to this. This was just literally taken from the large piece. And it was really fun to wear. And what's next? And yeah, that headpiece actually doubles up into a freestanding sculpture. And I really love that. I love the idea of a 2-in-1 sculpture. Yeah, this is another thing I had just lying around in my studio space at the time. And you might recognize the arm from one of the other pieces I submitted to the show. So I started to look at what I already had around. And I often have just groups of things, piles of things on my desk and on the wall that are like, in my mind, they're destined for a whole other body of work. So I'm like, yeah, I know what all that's about. I know all those fabrics, and I know in my head everything they're going to be made into. And I fall into this trap of thinking I know best, when really I don't always know best. And I sometimes get almost kind of annoyed with myself when these pieces get turned into other things that I didn't think they were destined for. But really, when I let go of that, and that is something that needs to be let go of, I think, because it's a very linear way of thinking. And I think it comes from the society we live in. So, you've got this pile of fabric here, you've decided what you're going to do with it. And if you don't finish that project, then you haven't finished what you started. But actually, as an artist, we're there to break all the rules, even our own, process rules. So I like the fact that usually none of the piles of things that I have lying around become what I originally intended them to be. So what's next? So these are some more things, just little experiments that I have lying around. And this is the piece that's in the show. And really, that's my process. It's like this constant battle with thinking, no, these things are meant for something else. And then completely doing away with that and turning them into something else. So you can see the crocodile hand here and the words. And this is another piece that was submitted. And I really just want to say something about this, that this to me, sometimes, I don't know if you can relate to this, but sometimes you make a piece of work and I really feel that this wasn't solely me who made this. This was brought to me by the creative process, if that makes any sense. And that's really how I see my process. I think by this point in time, by the time I've chopped everything up and reassembled everything, something else is at work. And this is the bit that I really love. It's kind of when you're warmed up and things are flowing, and then things get given to you. And this really was given to me. And as I was putting it together, I just saw me in it. This figure here, I really identify as me coming out of something. And although still fearful of my creative process, I'm working with it. And yeah, I couldn't have planned this piece, and I couldn't have planned any of the pieces I submitted to the show. And they all came about by just letting go of this fixed sort of storytelling narrative I had in my head. Oh yeah, I've forgotten. There was something I was going to say about that as well, that when I was really fixated with the idea of a girl and a crocodile, I had it all planned out in my head that I was going to do paintings of them, and then I was going to make more sculptures of them. I got really obsessed with this very kind of restrictive narrative. I even wanted to make a huge crocodile and then film me going on adventures with it, which actually still sounds quite fun. But there was something about those huge sewing projects that actually were holding me back. Maybe I'll come back to them another time, but that's it really. Was that really short?
No, that was great. That was fascinating. I am always fascinated by artists who actually, we have Elizabeth here. She's one of those artists who will do things and then take them apart and then put them back together in different ways and see where the muses send you. And I think that's a really cool thing. And like you had said, I don't always know. I know with my own art too, I don't always know what I'm doing until I get to the end. And it's like, oh, okay. I see what's happening now. Does anybody have any comments or questions?
I do.
Elizabeth does too with me. Okay, go ahead.
So, Anna,
Yeah.
I see collage here.
Yeah.
I'm just going to say this out loud. I'm going to encourage you to collage in fabric. I'll collage in paper. you can collage. What you're doing is beautiful. And I also see, whimsy. So to me, what that means is play. And lots of love. But I also see kind of this inner child that I saw immediately in your work when I first saw it on in the show. I can't sew like this. Like I look at this and I go, I'm green with envy. At the same time, I see you and I doing similar things, or I see even other textile artists collaging with fabric, and I'm like, yep, that's the coolest. It's cool. And I really liked how, I'm not sure, tell me if it's me, but do you think that textile work like this is more prevalent now than it used to be?
I think so. There seems to be like a real reemergence.
Thank you. Yeah.
Yeah, definitely.
I think there's a bit of reclamation of quilting also.
Understatement. Yeah.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
Thanks, Karen. Yeah, I was going to say, when my comment to you earlier was that, oh, I used to love collaging. I used to do collaging all the time. And then I thought, well, actually, I still do collaging.
I thought that when you said that.
I guess, I used to do a lot of just paper collage, and paper and fabric kind of flat. But yeah, I definitely still collage. I can't help myself.
Elizabeth, I know you have
that was, all the talks have been really interesting, but I just was going to comment. You forget sometimes, brought to you by the creative process. I love that, in that you sort of forget. You're kind of controlling things, and then things get out of control, and all of a sudden you're surprised and you've got something you couldn't possibly have cooked up.
Yeah.
And yet it's sort of like this push and pull thing. You want to kind of control, and then that's not so good. But very interesting to hear your journey, and thank you so much for sharing.
Oh, thank you so much. You're one of my favorite artists, I have to say.
Really?
I listened to your talk, and I just was just like, I was so inspired by your work.
Oh gosh, thank you so much. Feeling is like the same, mutual.
Oh, thank you.
Oh, that's wonderful. I love that. Does anybody else have a question or comment?
And I'm just going to mention that I really enjoy watching your work. And at the same time, I really love your courage that you could kind of cut it out, something that you don't feel good, feel comfortable. It's part of our kind of like making art, but needs lots of courage, So for this matter, I really love it and appreciate it. Yeah, thank you so much for showing us.
Thank you. Pleasure.
Do we have any?
I also just want to say thanks to Katie for thinking of this gallery and bringing all of us together. I mean, it's just so awesome, Katie.
Well done.
I feel the same way. This is, it's humbling and it's amazing what I get to do. And I am so grateful that I have the ability to do that. I'm so grateful for the artists who are a part of it, and every one of you. This gallery would not exist if it weren't for you, and I'm so grateful. I just am. Well, this has been wonderful, Anna. Thank you so much. Does anybody else have any questions or comments before we wrap up for today? Well, thank you to all of you for coming. Thank you to everyone who has come to support these artists, and to everyone who will be watching this as well on YouTube afterwards. It'll be going up in the next few days. And this talk has just touched my heart, and I am so thankful to all of you for allowing me to do what I do. Thank you to everyone who is supporting the gallery, and we will see you next time. All right.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it. Take care.
Bye-bye.
Bye.